1 minute.
Yes, now you got a couple, you got one missing. Okay.
Pretty good attempt.
Thank you. It being 10 o'clock, I will call the Finance Committee to order. And I'll begin with, we'll introduce ourselves. Some of us are new to the committee, so just so we get to know each other a little better. My name is pronounced Weiler, Ken Weiler. I'm the chairman of this committee for another term. I've been on the Finance Committee since '94, been in the House since '90. I'm an MIT grad. I went to the Air Force pilot training right out of college. Had a 38-year career in flying, both Air Force and American Airlines. Many of those years overlapped. And first elected in a special election in 1990. And had 1 year I missed out and lost an election, got in a special election a year later. So 34 years total in the House. And Vice Chair Dan McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my name is Dan McGuire. I'm from Epsom. I'm a retired computer engineer. This will be my 5th term in the House, all in finance. I was on Division 2 once, Division 3 twice, and this will be my second term on Division 1, which I'm also chairing. And now
Also an MIT grad.
also an MIT grad. Yeah, I only went to MIT for 11 years. So, and our ranking member and Dean of the House.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Mary Jane Wallner, and as Dan just told you, I'm the Dean of the House because I'm going into my 23rd term. So, and of that, probably 22 or 3 terms, 22 or 3 years have been on finance. So I've been here for quite a while, always on Division 3. And last year I had the opportunity to spend some time on Division 1. And that was really eye-opening for me because so many different agencies. I went to UNH, not MIT. Great school, UNH. And glad to be here and glad to meet all of you and see all you.
My name is Karen Ebel. I'm the deputy ranking member. I did not go to MIT and I've never flown a plane, but my husband did have a private airplane once. Anyway, I have been in the House. I'm headed into my 7th term. I spent 5 terms on public works and highways, working on the capital budget and that sort of thing. I'm a New Hampshire native. I grew up in Ossipee, New Hampshire. I ended up going to Georgetown, and I have a legal background, although I haven't practiced law for quite some time. And that's probably all you need to know about me.
Hi. Oh, boy. I'm Daniel Popovich Mueller, second term member, both on finance too. And born and raised in a communist country. Got my degree there in engineering. Then I got an MBA from Boston University in the US. I've worked on the business side for an IT startup, did a bunch of stuff, including technical training. I taught for a living for 10 years. I worked in corporate finance. I worked in government finance. And, here we are working on state finances. So if you need to know more about me, I'm known to talk way too much. So be careful about asking questions in a private setting. Thank you.
I'm Harry Bean. I'm from Belknap County. This is my 4th term, 3rd term in finance. I live on a piece of property in Guilford that my family has owned and lived on since 1842. I guess swam.
Gary Daniels. I live in Milford. This is my 10th term in the House. My first 9 terms, I was on the Labor Committee. Then I went to the Senate for 3 terms where I chaired the Senate Finance Committee for 2 of my last 2 terms there. And now I'm back in the House. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mary Hacken Phillips, and my last name is pronounced like hack, like computer hack. I represent Hanover and Lyme. I'm in my 3rd term. My first term I served on Ways and Means, and the second term I was here with you in Finance, and I'm glad to be back. I'm a lawyer by trade, but I have a background before that in the financial and banking sector. So I'm just so pleased to be back again. Thank you.
My name is Chris Munns. I grew up in the Detroit area, so you'll understand why I'm pretty excited about the football season this year. It's been a long time coming. I first came to New Hampshire when I arrived in Hanover to get my master's in business administration degree from Dartmouth, and have been here pretty much ever since. I spent most of my professional career in the private sector, working in a variety of financial management and HR management positions. And when I left the private sector, I spent 5 years as the CEO of one of our state's 10 area agencies that provide supports to individuals with developmental disabilities. This is my 3rd term in the House. I don't know what it says about me, but I get moved to a different committee every term. I started in Commerce. I spent the last term in Science, Technology, and Energy, and I'm very happy to be here in Finance.
Hi, I'm Brian Seaworth. With my degree in engineering came from RPI. This is my 7th term in the House. My first term back in 2011, I was on Chairman Daniels' committee, Labor, and that's where I've been for 12 years now. I was 4 years the clerk of that committee, 4 years the vice chair of that committee, and 2 years in the minority. So I'm looking forward to learning some new things, serving here on Finance. The budget is one of the most important duties of the House, and I hope to contribute to making that a success. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kate Murray. I'm from Newcastle and represent Newcastle and Portsmouth. This is my 5th term, 4th on Finance. My first term was on Criminal Justice and Public Safety. I come out of academia, although it's been a really, really, really long time since I was in academia. I have advanced degrees in the psychology of music from the University of Illinois and advanced degrees in theology from UC Berkeley and Graduate Theological Union. I have enjoyed being on Finance immensely. This has been a really good committee and a very committee where I've learned so much, and I've really enjoyed learning all that and expect to continue to do that. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Joe Sweeney from Salem. I work in marketing. I also attended the University of New Hampshire for undergrad and master's. And this is my 2nd term on Finance, 5th term overall, and I'm excited to be back with all of you. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hi, Representative.
We'll start with Jerry.
I'm Jerry Griffin. I'm your clerk. I'll have more to say about that in a minute. I have after college, I went into the Air Force. They made me into an aircraft engineer, and I served as an aircraft maintenance officer. I have service in Vietnam. When I came back from that, I got a master's degree, and at the same time, sat for the CPA exam and passed it. So I practiced in industry as a CPA. Most of my time was in industry. This is my 4th term in the House, all of which have been spent on Finance, given my background. I want to warn you all about one thing. I don't care whether your name is Smith or Jones. I have the ability to mispronounce it, and I ask you all for forgiveness right up front. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I'm Representative Jess Edwards, representing Auburn, Chester, Candia, and Deerfield. So this is my 5th term. Very happy to be back. Background, I was married 41 years. I've got 2 daughters, adult daughters and a granddaughter. Very proud of them. Fun fact, I'm the only hospital administrator in U.S. military history to have established a combat arms training facility capable of training 3 battalions simultaneously in a hostile fire zone. So, so if you need any armed combatants, come talk to me. Hopefully the budget won't be that contentious. I think my specialties are in healthcare, finance, and IT. And I'm very happy to have a nice set of additional duties in the legislature to do that, like HHS oversight, the Joint Fiscal Committee, the IT Council, that sort of thing. So happy to be here. And I didn't get to hear everyone's introduction, so if you could just repeat it quickly, and I'm sorry I'm late.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Representative Keith Thurr from Ware. I grew up in Connecticut and went to school in Boston and then moved up to New Hampshire to work for a startup company. When that didn't go well, I started my own company and my own software services company, software application and development company, and been there ever since. It's my 4th term in the House, 4th term on finance. First 3 were on Division 3 with Representative Edwards, Chairman Edwards, and this year I'm switching it up, and I'm on Division 2 as the chairman.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maureen Mooney. I'm in my 6th term representing the town of Merrimack in Hillsborough County. Currently, I'm the vice chair of Division 3. Previous to finance, of which I've been on for a term and a half, I've served on the Election Law Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Rules Committee, and have held various positions within the caucus. I look forward to this term. Thank you all very much.
Good morning. My name is Peter Leishman. This is my 13th term in the House, 9 of which I've spent here on the Finance Committee on Division 1 during those 9 terms. I'm outside of the legislature. I'm in the railroad business, and I'm happy to be here as well. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. My name is Jose Cambrils. I'm from Loudon, and I represent Canterbury and Loudon. I'm a Northeastern graduate and a retired engineering executive in the military electronics industry. This is my 3rd term. My 1st term, I served on Science, Tech, and Energy. And these last 2 terms, I'll be on Finance Division 1, and I am now the Vice Chair of Division 1, and I greatly appreciate that honor. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Laura Tulersky. I grew up in the Nashua neighborhood that I now represent. This is my 4th term in the House. My first 2 terms, I served on the House Transportation Committee, and last term joined my friends on Division 3. I have a degree in history from Georgetown University and a master's degree in Middle Eastern Studies from the University of Chicago, and I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm David Priest. I represent Hillsborough District 17 in Manchester. I received my graduate and doctoral studies degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I practiced as an urban and regional planner for 44 years, both in the public and private sector. I've been in New Hampshire now for 20 years. I came here to serve as the executive director and CEO for the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission in the Manchester area. And this is my 2nd term in the House. I served both on the municipal and a half a year on Division 3 in finance. And it gives me great pleasure to be back with all of you. Thank you.
Wow, I'm the newbie. I guess I'm the only one. I'm originally from Kittery, Maine. Went to Trape Academy, University of Southern Maine. My tour of duty these last years have been in finance. I was a banker, commercial mortgage lender. Also, I ran VP of operations. Then I moved on to manufacturing, where I worked as in a startup position of a multimedia firm that was international. I didn't take it public, we took it public. And then after that, I moved on to a short term of retirement. Then I went in to education for a little while, served 10 years on the Monarch School of New England. I was the project manager and fundraiser to build that school. I'm now retired, or I thought I was, but I'm back in business.
Good morning. My name is Eileen Kelly, and I represent Merrimack District 8, which is Bradford, the town I live in, and Henniker and Warner. And I am a former staff person here at the State House for a total of 22 years, senior policy assistant in the Democratic office. And then my last 2 years, I served as chief of staff for Speaker Shurtleff. So I'm very familiar with a lot of you, having been here so long. And I have a BA in English. Thank you.
I think last but not least, and Susan, you're not alone, I'm a newbie as well. Rich Nolivenko. I represent Cheshire District 9, which is Elstead, Gilsum, Marlow, Stoddard. My background in education is, we've been in New Hampshire for 24 years, retired here after a extensive career in the international oil and energy business, which had us living in Tokyo, Japan for 4 years, Hong Kong for 2, London, England for 7, and have had the opportunity to travel to 63 different countries, none of them in South America, 1 in Africa. So unless you're really good at geography, you might have a hard time after you get out of the European theater, and been to a lot of places that aren't going to have tourist business in our lifetimes. My background, I have an engineering degree from Cornell University, and then an MBA from the University of Pittsburgh. I'm originally from the Western Pennsylvania area with a major in finance. Most of my experience has been in and out of the finance area in various different corporate level, in charge of finance for an international division of a major Fortune 500 company. I currently have 5 grown kids, all of them college educated, and 15 grandkids. So have a vested interest in making sure that, and half of those are in New Hampshire. So I have a vested interest in making sure that we're all doing the best for the future citizens of New Hampshire. Thank you.
What an impressive group of talent. We should have no problem with this budget. So, we like to start on time. If you're not going to make it, please make sure someone knows about it. And if it's 24 hours in advance, we can get a replacement for you. But if we don't know in advance, then we can't. Hopefully you have an email account you'll give to Janet. You'll meet her shortly. She's our den mother, and she has a full-time job, one of the few committee assistants that's here year-round, because there's so much to do, and she has to catch up on all the minutes on all the committees that we've met after we finished our session. We're all properly dressed. I expect we will be for the rest of the time. Remember that we're on TV for a lot of this, and I will always address you because of the fact we're on TV. You know, I'd like to say Dan and Jerry, but no, it's Representative McGuire, Representative Griffin, because it's all going out over TV and being recorded. We have a coffee fund in this committee, and we also have a lunchroom at the back corner there. There's a little refrigerator. Some of you might keep a lunch in there. I don't know if it's going to hold all of them, but if you wanted to do it, there's usually space there. Sometimes when we just have a short time for lunch, it's handy that we can all come back there, and there's room for about half of us to eat lunch back there, if you brought your lunch. As I said, because of, and Janet quite often has goodies there, if everybody pays their $20 a year for the coffee fund, and you'll have free coffee and so on for just for the members of the committee. Don't invite others in to use up our coffee. We won't have food or coffee on the table during our hearings. If you're really thirsty, water's okay, but don't have stuff on the table. We're always going to have a lot of paperwork. We don't want to spill anything on it that makes a stain on you, the floor, or the paperwork. Anybody has a medical issue, make sure we know about it, or I know about it, or your chair of your division. Electronic devices, please have your phones turned off. Don't think I did that to mine yet. So we don't get disturbed. A few of us will have that are chairs and vice chairs will have an office. The others, you will have assigned in that room there, a drawer where Janet will put your paperwork that you'll need to have for the committees. The two members at the end of the table, Representative Sweeney and Representative Nalavenka, if we have a problem with somebody testifying, I may give you a signal to go out and get somebody from security to come in and deal with it. Fire alarm, and we exit out here, and we'll probably be assembling across the street. So as you know, Rule 31, all spending bills originate in the House and in this committee. We're assigned by the others. It's a heavy lift, especially with the budget every other year. And unlike other committees, we have the best assistants. We have the legislative budget assistants. Mr. Kane will introduce himself shortly, and the three people sitting over there are also some of the geniuses that keep us on score. Dan?
There's 4.
Where's the fourth? Oh, there he is. He's sitting at the proper place. Sorry about that. You'll get to all these people introduced. There's some in each division, and Mike is in charge of all of them. He's the dean, because quite often a lot of these people that he brings them on board, most of them are CPAs, somebody steals them somewhere else in state government, so he's constantly educating people. He's the dean of the College of Finance people. So you'll get to introduce himself shortly. We have 14 Republicans and 10 Democrats in the committee. All the bills that will have a fiscal note on them will likely come to us unless it's a fee or a tax, and then
11.
What did I say?
You said
11.
10.
14 and
Republicans.
14 and 11. Okay, sorry, and that's what you're here for. Keep me straight. So we'll see bills from virtually every committee. If they have a committee and a policy committee, and it deals with it and it has a cost to it, they'll send it to us. Normally, in the first year of the budget, we just include it in the budget. If it's passed through the House, comes to us, we'll send it to a division of appropriate subject matter, and then we'll try to include it in the budget. It's going to be more difficult this year, so I've tried to get each policy committee to deal with the spending within their expertise. In other words, if you're Fish and Game and somebody says, oh, we need 3 new such and such, and you say, well, find another place where you can take 3 from and replace them with these 3, rather than come to us and expect us to add more employees. So that's one of the things I've asked them to do, but we'll see how that works out. But normally in the first year, we were able to put a lot of those things. In the second year, it's a little more difficult unless there's a big surplus. We already have 3 of our people assigned to the new committee on education spending. Representative McGuire, Representative Erf,
Popovici Muller.
Representative Popovici Muller. And they'll be juggling both of those committee works. It'll affect when we schedule ours. The subcommittees, we have 3 divisions. You'll hear about those in the afternoon. Keep checking the calendar, including your personal calendars. If you put any bills in, that's sometimes the only way you find about, oh, tomorrow I got a bill I've got to introduce in such and such a place. If you're looking at a bill file to write the report on it that goes to the House, do not remove it from this building. Sit down and work on it. Also, when we have when you make the motion, you'll have to make the report and be ready to go to the floor, and have that ready before you leave the building. Committee replacement, I discussed. Let people know. If you call your partisan office, then they'll do their best to have someone fill in for you the next day and give them an idea what the bills are that will be exec. We'll have a lot of people come before us. You'll find conflicting testimony from 2 different witnesses. It's not our role to say, wait a minute, the last person said that, you shouldn't be right. No, we don't debate them. We listen patiently, and when we come to the exec session, then we'll discuss what we believe the version of the truth was. We won't challenge people that come to us, because our job is to listen and not have a lot of searching questions. You can have a question if you think they stated something wrong and give them a chance to restate it, but don't argue with them if they don't. Don't make a speech when you want to make a question. Just ask the question. And wait till I recognize you to ask the chair, to ask the question. And when a bill that you have sponsored comes before us, you will sit out in the audience rather than at your regular seat, and you won't be able to ask the other people that come after you to discuss your bill. You won't be able to ask them questions. That's just the way it is, because it's got to be a fair thing. They've got to have a fair hearing rather than a debate with you. We will debate it in the executive committee, and you can have notes and tell us all the people that said the wrong things, and we will listen to you. Conflict of interest and recusal might come about, and make sure that it's known. If it's known, we should all know it. Also, what's the other thing? We may have a chance, if we have several bills to work on, I might put in the calendar, executive sessions may follow if there's time available. In other words, we thought we were going to have 45 minutes on a bill. We had 10. Left us 35 minutes. So, okay, we just heard 2 other bills before that. Without objection from the ranking member, we'll ask to have an exec session on some bills that seemed fairly apparent how people felt about them. And we'll try to fit in those exec sessions just to kind of save us money, save us time. When we have an executive session, it's just us. And normally we're hearing from Division 1, then Division 2, Division 3. Because most bills will have a full hearing here. The subject matter will go to the appropriate division. They'll have another hearing, and they'll make a decision and a recommendation to the full committee. Then when we come back for an exec session for all the bills that have been before the committee, we'll start with Division 1, we'll go through them, and then we'll go through Division 2, Division 3, and so on. And you will tell us, we will know when we sit down what the recommendation was from the division, which will help us guide us to how we'll decide. The people that make the motions will likely write the report and defend it on the floor. Committee report, minority report, make sure we know if you're on the other side and you want to make sure there's a minority report, make sure that the minority report is known, and we'll have that in the calendar as well. So I want to say more about the legislative budget assistant. We have the most work of any committee, but we have the most help. And some of you are used to running back and forth across the street in other committees to try to get an amendment. These people know how to do it a lot quicker. So I will turn it over to the Legislative Budget Assistant, Mike Kane, and he will explain what you have before you, and you have a nice briefing that he's going to go over. And also, another thing that I've put on each of your places, this is a list of paychecks that the treasurer has given me. So when you have a group come before you and you look at the page and the numbers in the column will tell you where to look, like 02700 for Employment Security Department, and how many employees they have. Because what I've discovered in 16 budgets now the 16th budget, is that they quite often pad the number of employees. And then when you try to ask the question, well, how many are really working? Well, we had a bunch of people that are going to be ready to retire, and we got some more people in the pipeline, and we're interviewing more. And blah, blah. This is the number we hope we'd get. And you never hear the true number. And sometimes you'd say, the last budget, I had 1 month of what the real paycheck. Yeah, but we had more people coming. So this way we can look back and see how many people you had over the whole year. So don't come in and add 10 or 15 more employees to it. This is going to be a tight budget. And a lot of the money will come from not funding empty positions. And we've been doing that for years. We do our best to avoid it. This is the mechanism I've chosen. The treasurer can give me an accurate account of how many paychecks get issued to that division. And if you didn't have 150 paychecks issued over the last year, why are you asking for 150 people when the most you've had is 135? So these are some of the things that I hope will save us money as we go through this budget. Those are the things that I want each of you to have a copy of that. Division 2 and 3 are on the back because they don't have nearly as many departments to deal with as Division 1 does. So those are a good guide as you look at their proposal. This is how many people we want. This is how many people you had for a whole year. So very handy stuff. We can save a lot of money by not funding vacant positions. So thank you. Mr. Kane.
Want to recognize Representative Munns?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. You mentioned about turning off phones, which is, thank you for reminding me. Any restrictions on having laptops, iPads on the desk?
I know some of you use that for, taking notes. So as long as you're not using it as a distraction, then fine, because I see Representative Murray takes notes on it. So, and we've been doing that for a while. So that's the way it works. That's the way it works. And, you're not taking phone calls on it or anything else. If you do it silently. Thank you. Mr. Kane.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Michael Kane, the Legislative Budget Assistant. With me, I have some of my staff. They're not going to stay for the whole orientation because they don't want to listen to me, but at the same time, they have fiscal notes and presentations. They're going to talk to you later. Just quickly about myself, Michael Kane. I came to New Hampshire in 1999, working for the Legislative Budget Assistant, and I've been here ever since. So it's my 25th year with the office. Next to me, we have our Senior Budget Officer, Mick Landrigan, who's going to be working with Division 2. And behind me, we have Jack Mullen, who's going to be working with Division 1. Melissa Rollins is going to be working with Jack in Division 1. And then Kevin Ripple working with Division 3. Who you don't see here today from the Budget Division is Chris Shea, who's the Deputy LBA. He has another obligation, but he does say hello. Chris also works with the Ways and Means Committee and the Capital Budget Overview Committees. during the development of the capital budget and revenue estimates. And then we have Pam Ellis, who's probably listening back at the office, issuing thousands of fiscal notes and rules. She keeps the office going. So Pam Ellis has been with our office for close to 17 years. We also have an audit division of 22 auditors currently. We usually run between 22 and 24, split almost evenly between performance auditors and financial auditors. And they're located outside of the State House in the TD Bank building across the street from the former Holiday Inn. So I'm going to begin the quick, I call it a quick orientation. We stopped calling it a budget briefing because it is 93 pages, but I can guarantee you I will not be going through every page. This is more of a reference document. We do post it online, so you can use this as a coaster or placeholder, but we do have it online for members of the public, and it does have some good information relative to budget terms you're going to be hearing for the new members and for members of the public. Documents you should get used to seeing as we go through the process, and other things. It's probably the smallest document we're going to be handing to you because when the budget comes out, you'll be receiving an 800-page document of House Bill 1 for the appropriations and probably another 100 or so pages with a trailer bill. So this is just the beginning. We like to break you in by handing an unwieldy document to you right off the start. But I'll walk you through this. Just on page 2, or page 1, the second page right behind the cover is just a staff directory. We're located in State House Room 101 and 102, and we also have some basement offices. But you can see a staff listing as well as our numbers and the new email addresses. You may have all been notified that the General Court is moving from leg.state.nh.us to a simpler gc.nh.gov. I believe this will be going live next week. You can still email us at either address and they'll come through to us. But we did just want to make sure, since it is a document online, we have the new structure. On page 2 are just some common terms defined for those of you who have not been part of finance. There are some good definitions here. I will not going through all of them. One of the most important you're going to hear is accounting unit. Accounting unit is a component of the budget for your agencies on where a certain program is funded. So there are several hundred accounting units that you'll be seeing in your divisions. So as you hear that term, there's usually a number code that goes along with it that our analysts will walk you through today. Appropriation being the authorization granted by the legislative body. The appropriation is an authorization to expend. So it's basically you're giving the agency the okay to spend up to a certain amount. Appropriations are also sometimes granted through the fiscal committee, which is a 10-member joint committee of the General Court who approves additional acceptance of additional federal funds and other funds, and in rare cases, in minimal cases, for general funds for Judicial Council, Department of Justice, and Department of Corrections, and a couple of other agencies. And just a footnote for the new members. What's a footnote? You'll see text in House Bill 1 that will have restrictions on how the appropriations can be spent or how they can be transferred. For instance, you may have a footnote in the budget, which our analysts will go over with you, that maybe allows the agency to not lapse the funds or carry forward any unexpended funds into the next year. It may place limits on whether or not the funds can be transferred in or out into those particular class lines, which are the smaller unit of expenditures. And lapse is a number you're going to be hearing. Lapse is a number is basically unexpended appropriations. For the past 4 years, it hasn't received a lot of attention because the revenues from a budget perspective were over budget. If we go back a few years ago, this was an item that the lapse number is the unexpended appropriations that the legislature assumes will not be spent to allow a balanced budget. So it's up to the executive branch to balance the budget, which assumes the amount of revenue coming in, the amount of authorized expense, and then the lapsed or unexpended appropriations. And that can occur from things like vacancies, staff vacancies being one of the big portions of lapse. Representative Weiler had asked how much salaries and benefits make up of a total budget. Usually between 25 and 26% of your general fund spending is employment. So lapse figures from estimates that are different from what was projected almost 2 years ago. So even though the finance committees do the best they can to appropriate what they think will be needed for the next 2 years, things change. Contracts take a little longer. The economy changes, utilization changes for programs, and so that lapse does occur. And then a surplus deficit statement, you'll see an example later on in here, which is really a document that we prepare, the governor prepares, and then we prepare for the House and Senate to ensure that the state passes a balanced budget plan for the next 2 years. RSA 9 is the portion of the state statute relative to appropriations and expenditures. Just a couple of sections I'll take you to is on page 4. RSA 9.2 is transmission to the legislature. This is a requirement that the governor present his or her budget by February 15th of the odd number year. So this year, February 15th falls on a Saturday. Typically, the governor will present to the full House and Senate in joint session. My guess is, I don't know the exact dates. You'd have to reach out to the governor. My guess it would happen around the 12th or 13th, most likely. It's not going to happen on Saturday, but it's never happened before, but you never say never. So, but that is the deadline in statute that the governor must submit the operating budget to the legislature. In addition, that was put in a few years ago, RSA 92A. On top of the operating budget, there's a bill that goes along with it that is referred to as the trailer bill. And those are all the statutory changes necessary to implement and effectuate the changes in the budget. There were a couple of years ago, we put in, we being the state of New Hampshire put into the RSAs a requirement that the trailer bill also be submitted by the governor by February 15th. For some of you who have been on finance for a while, there were years when you wait a good 3 weeks prior to seeing the language that is in the trailer bill. And it does delay the ability of the finance committee to really look at that budget policy and make decisions within a short period of time. On page 5, there's one sentence I'll point out up top that was just added. Although there was always a requirement that, or not always, but in the last couple of years, a requirement to submit the trailer bill, it was in printed format in an electronic computer format, but it wasn't publicly posted online. So members of the public and members of the legislature would hear what was potentially in the trailer bill, but until it was introduced in House Bill 2, they couldn't see it. So the new sentence was added that the document shall be available printed format, one electronic, and shall be publicly posted on the Department of Administrative Services website on the date of transmittal. So there's a requirement that by February 15th, all the text of House Bill 2 needs to be put on the Department of Administrator's website. So that should help the members of finance understand, and members of the public understand what the governor is proposing in their budget.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to ask a clarifying question. So what is the delay then? Are you in your office and are you drafting HB2 at that point? Are you just getting the information from the governor's budget on the 15th and then you have to draft the actual language? Like, what is that delay?
Yes, thank you. So we will, our office will receive, and the Office of Legislative Services, who drafts legislation, will receive a copy from the Governor's Legal Counsel of the text of House Bill 2. The Office of Legislative Services will then spend, usually takes them about a week to 2 weeks, depending how large it is, to actually draft and introduce or draft the legislation for introduction in House Bill 2. So because the trailer bill usually has several changes to statute, various effective dates, components that do relate, it does take the drafters, the legislative drafters, usually about a week to 2 weeks usually closer to the 2 weeks, to get the final text, the legislative text available. And that has been the delay in the past because the public would not see any of that text until that bill was introduced. Hopefully, the sentence that was added last year will at least have that text in a not a legislative format yet. There will be some tweaks to it, but the subjects will be there. It'll be in the best attempt by the governor's office to put it into statutory language, and then we'll have the final. But that will at least get each division will start to work on their portions. They'll have an idea of what they need to change, what they agree to, what they need to learn about. So,
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as I understand the tradition, the goal is for HB1 and HB2 to have the chair and the division chairs as sponsors and co-sponsors of HB1 and HB2, and then it actually does become the Finance Committee's bill.
Right.
that's correct. And that's important to note that the governor will recommend their budget, but it does not become a bill until the legislature makes that introduction of both House Bill and 1 and 2. We go to the House deadlines this year. On page 20, crossover, the last day I'm going to start with the crossover day. The last day to act on all House bills is April 10th. That means that all bills, including the budget, need to be reported out by this committee on April 3rd. Our analysts will go work with you over the next several weeks once we do get the budget to provide some deadlines to you to help you to meet that goal. Typically 1 or 2 days prior to the reporting out of the committee, the divisions will present their budget recommendations to the full committee for a vote, which will then be, after the vote, will be compiled into one document. So your final vote will be around April 3rd. As Representative Weiler said, the workload of House Finance is significant, not only for the budget, but between 50 and 100 bills, depending on how they go through the policy committees of bills with potential fiscal impacts on all the agencies that you're going to look at. You'll get them later because the policy committees are currently going to start to work on those bills now. You'll have a short time period, and on top of that, we like to throw the budget into it as well. So it's going to be quite the busy time, almost like a holiday season for legislation. It's just overwhelming at times, but we're here to help you through that to make sure you meet all those deadlines. Page 22 is it's an operating budget process. Agency phase has started. Sorry. Yes.
No, I just wanted to say before we leave this House deadlines, there's sort of an unofficial thing that I think finance members may want to keep an eye on. And that is that right now the speaker is planning to do a winter break. The winter break is 24 through 28 February. And in Division 3, we're hoping to have gotten our work done to the point to where we can actually take that week and do something with it. But so for the new people in particular, you just want to be aware and stay in touch with your division chair on what you're going to do that week. You may have a chance to go get warm somewhere or just continue to toil away in a committee room somewhere.
Traditionally, this committee doesn't take the break because we just need the time. The other things are we might end up working weekends or till 10 o'clock at night. So if the LBA is pretty good at scheduling everything for us and trying to keep us to 5 days a week and full days, but normally we stay here during that vacation time because we don't get interrupted as much by other committees, especially the fact that we've got some of our committee members that are doing double duty. So that'll be one of the few weeks that they won't be called away. So do your best not to schedule something for then. Thank you.
In the analysts working with your division, whatever deadlines you want or whatever schedules you have, we'll make sure that the agencies are in and the topics are addressed in that manner. I'm lucky to have such a wonderful staff who does work very well with the divisions to make sure you'll meet your deadlines. So there's no question about that. On page 22 is just kind of the operating budget process. Actually started back in March, where the agency phase of the budget. Agencies start presenting their 26 and 27 budget into the budget system, which they have until October. They then present a governor. They receive instructions from the governor on what they should present. What are the targets? What are the goal of the governor as far as where they see revenues at the time? Agencies and their agency budget request. It varied by agency, but overall about a 4% reduction in what they received in FY25. Governor's phase began upon the beginning of the governor's right before Veterans Day. The governor's budget hearings, and then we'll continue through February 15th. This is a portion of the budget phase, those first two, that we're not involved in. We have no access to the budget system or information or what's going on. We only hear basically from our agencies, no detail, but what's happening. And then from February to April this year, the House will have the budget, which will go very quick. It's usually, even though it looks like 2 months, it's probably closer to 6 weeks when you look at your deadlines to report, to have public hearings, to have a presentation to the full House. It's about 6 weeks. So it's going to be a tight time frame, but we'll get you through that. When the House passes their budget, it'll go over to the Senate, who has until the beginning of June to pass their portion, which will then come back to the House for either concurrence, request for committee conference, or non-concurrence. And then after that, it will go to the governor's office. As far as the governor's phase is involved, it's going on right now. We're hearing just from the press and just looking in, the governor went back to agencies for further reductions. So you may have heard during the governor's budget hearings the impact of a 4% reduction or a 2% reduction on an agency. We don't know the exact number, but we have heard agencies are putting together additional reductions for the governor. So we know they're hard at work, the executive branch right now, so that Governor Ayotte can present a balanced budget by February 15th. Revenues is one of the big, and kind of going off script here, but revenues is one of the big questions right now. We being the state, were almost $50 million under revenue through December. Usually, if you are under revenue in December, you'll most likely end the year under plan. So we're taking a look at 25 right now with the revenues and how they're going to perform. March and April being the two largest months. Unfortunately, you'll be so deep into your budget process, you won't have the final numbers, but you have a good indication through midway in March on where you think those revenues. Ways and Means Committee will be providing this committee with revenues. Estimated revenues, and that timing is depending on discussions amongst leadership. Agencies are typically hesitant to provide any solid estimates until they work with the governor, who they do, who is their employer in the executive branch. So we know they're working close. You should talk to the chair of Ways and Means, but typically around the beginning of March, you'll have an idea where your revenues are. It's hard to predict where they'll go, but most likely they will be low. And that's just a ballpark estimate. But once the governor comes out with her estimates on the middle of February, you'll have a good sense of what you have in front of you. It's going to be different than the last few years. The members who have been on the committee the last few years, it was still hard. It's always very hard. There's always needs out there that the state needs to take care of. There's always changes in policy the state needs to address. From a revenue perspective, the revenues were performing very well over the last few years, but that's ended, and it's going to end. And that's why you have the agencies working so hard with the governor right now. And very, very hard to predict for 26 and 27. Ways and Means, House Ways and Means, and Senate Ways and Means has a very hard task in front of them to determine where the revenues will be for the next 2 years. One of the major reasons is business taxes, being your largest revenue for the General and Education Trust Fund, are so volatile and so hard to predict. But you do have a great Commissioner of Department of Revenue Administration who will work closely with both Ways and Means Committee to give them the best estimates where they are. And usually at the end of the process, the legislature does a pretty good job of coming to an agreement of where they think the next 2 years will end up. Just samples of what a budget looks like. If we go into the pages are basically for the online version, but it's about page 25. It's just more numbers in code. This is a very non-reader friendly document, but this is a copy of House Bill 1. These are the appropriations that are put into the accounting system. So as the agencies are ready to make payments, payroll bills, these are the accounts that they come off of. In the event that these accounts are not the proper place to have the money, the agencies for any transfers over $100,000 has to ask the fiscal committee for approval to make that transfer. We make sure that it's allowable and then it goes forward. But 800 pages of numbers like this is really hard to find what you're looking for. This is actually summarized, which is kind of funny because there's object codes beneath the classes, probably 20 for each one. So that's a very hard document to look at. So the classes, the personnel services in class 10, benefits in class 60 are really consolidated into one. So if you have a constituent or you're interested in one certain program, it's very hard to find in here. Reach out to us. We'll locate that for you. And sometimes we have to ask agencies and dig deeper. You'll have $200 million class lines in Health and Human Services that fund 40 or 50 contracts. So, but you're not going to be able to see that from House Bill 1, nor will your constituents or the public. So we can help dig down and provide that information to you, ask the agency to provide that detail to you, and also just to remind everyone, we share everything online. We put everything that's handed out in the division online so that the members of the public and members of the legislature, when you're doing other things, can go back and reference those documents to kind of pay attention to what each division is doing. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if you could just identify which of the items on this sample page tie back to the definitions on page 2, accounting unit, category, class line. What's an example of each of those?
Thank you. So accounting unit. If we look at the example of House Bill 1, what we refer to as accounting unit are on the left-hand side of the page, the 01 general government. So 01, 04, 04, 0410 1170. We consider that to be the full chain of the accounting unit. As you get into looking at the budget a little more, you'll start referring to the accounting unit by the last four. For instance, 1170, depending on your division. But that is the accounting unit. The 3 digits below that with the classifications of the appropriations, those are called classes. So class 11 for the Senate, personnel services unclassified. Class 060 is benefits. And class, just another example, class 080 is out-of-state travel. So there are these are all unique classes for each agency so that there's consistency across the agency and the accounting units, that the spending is happening in the same account. So when Representative Weiler asked a question of kind of how much there's salary and benefits as a percentage of the budget, we'll use a budget by class because we know it's consistent across all departments, and we'll just add the percentages there. So, and then the footnote that I referenced previously, if you look, it's called organization notes. You can see there's an asterisk, and in this case, it's the president of the Senate designating permanent employees and the benefits that they're eligible to receive. So you'll see the asterisk, you'll see the note, the word note, when those footnotes do come up. And so that's from that page. I think those are the main pieces of information you'll need. Sure. A document that we will prepare is on page 32. It's called a compare document. The governor will present a budget, and the House is going to make changes to that budget. both in House Bill 1 and House Bill 2. We prepare a document called a compare report, so you can see the differences between what the House is proposing and what the governor is proposing. We run this on a regular basis back in our office to make sure that we're keeping track of all the changes, so we can present estimates to the chairs to let them know that, that their budget is balanced and to track all those changes. So for instance, if you were to look at that compare report, you can see, I believe it's under consultants, the House added $10,000 to the Senate, and they reduced under personnel services $10,000. So you can see the class line, they make the changes, and then the total. This was a net zero, but you'll have this for every accounting unit that will print. Page 34, if you're wondering why there's a 1 and a 2 and they're not all together, well, the Constitution does not allow changes to statute to be included in the budget bill. So the legislature, in their wisdom, has determined that we can just have a bill follow it along, call it the trailer bill in House Bill 2, and that will have all the necessary statutory changes and then comply with the Constitution on that side. On page 35 is the beginning of House Bill 2. Just the now these are all a couple examples. What does House Bill 2 do that House Bill 1 can't do? Well, it can't rename divisions of the Department of Information Technology without making changes to statute. So that has to be into House Bill 2, authorizing agencies separate from what's authorized in RSA to fill unfunded positions. That needs to be made in House Bill 2. So our analysts will work with you. Any changes you're proposing in the budget that we believe needs to have a corresponding House Bill 2 change, we will assist you in drafting those. And it's become pretty large over the last couple of years. Few hundred sections, which is a lot. I do remember the day, the good old days when there could be 10 or 12 sections, but it has grown over time. One of the reasons it's grown is because there are a lot of changes in the budget that do require changes in statute. If you're going to require DES to no longer do something, you have to make sure there's not a statutory requirement to do so. But the other reason is bills. As Representative Weiler mentioned, there's several bills are going to come to House Finance. There's several bills that are going to go to Senate Finance. There are 1,100 bills that will probably be introduced at the beginning of this section, this session, that are going to go through the policy committees and live or die through there. Over the last couple of years, we've noticed both the House and the Senate, if there's a major policy that they want, sometimes they include it in House Bill 2. So it may be something the House has passed, or they know that the Senate may not want to include in their proposals for legislation that they'll put into House Bill 2. Senate does the same thing. Watch what happens with their bills over in the Senate. Maybe put them to House Bill 2. Why? Because then it's simpler to kill a bill on its own. It's harder to kill a bill when it's part of a larger process. And so that's what's happened over the last couple of years that may or may not continue. But it's something that, because that does happen, our analysts, from the moment it's introduced, we are tracking bills that go through the committee. Even if they aren't in House Bill 1 or 2, we're paying attention because at one time they may come here to finance and make its way into the budget.
Can I just make a point on that?
Sure.
So the Constitution in the section just prior to the one you mentioned requires that all money bills start in the House. So what the Senate will frequently do when they want to spend money on X, they might have a bill of their own, they pass it, and then they table it, and then they modify House Bill 2, because it's a House bill, to make that change, right? So they can't, effectively, they get around that constitutional thing by changing a House bill to do it, rather than having Senate Bill 123 do it.
Yes, the legislature is very creative. Over the 25 years, I've seen a lot, haven't seen everything, and but yes, the Senate will table a lot of bills. You'll see Senate Finance with a lot of introduced bills with appropriations that they'll table. In the past, bills that were tabled, maybe they didn't they go forward, and they die on the table at the end of the 2 years. But with the Senate, they will hold out because there will be introduced Senate bills with appropriations. The Senate just does not know if they can fit it within their budget proposal yet. So they'll hold it off to the side, eventually put it into House Bill 2 if they decide. On page 46, it's just a one page of a surplus statement just to give you an example of what it will look like at the end of the process. A beginning balance of a year for the General and Education Trust Fund, estimated revenues from the governor, House Ways and Means, or Senate Ways and Means. Revenue adjustments. Revenue adjustments are usually changes in House Bill 2 or other policy bills going through the legislature that do have an impact on revenues. What the Ways and Means Committee are asked in the House is to estimate base revenues. What are the revenues based on current law? Not on what's proposed, but on current law. So that's what you'll get from House Ways and Means. But there will be sections in policy or other bills and in House Bill 2 that may impact revenues. If there are bills that the House is passing and in favoring or including House Bill 2, those will be the revenue adjustments that you'll see on row 5. And so we'll track those throughout the process. We want to make sure that, yes, finance is proposing a balanced budget based on the revenues and appropriations you have. But if we are aware of anything going on in the House and the Senate that has an impact, we want to make sure the legislature passes a balanced budget. So there's probably a 3-page Schedule 2 that feeds up into this that has all the detail of the different bills and appropriations and impact on revenues, just so we can keep track of all of that to ensure a balanced budget. Budget appropriations, appropriation adjustments, lapses, which I talked about. Just a couple numbers. $76 million was the estimated lapse in 24. The agencies actually came in with a $52 million lapse. So they missed the lapse for the first time in several years. Paying attention on 25, the estimated lapse is $117.7 million of general funds that the legislature and governor initially signed, saying that would not be spent. That's something that fiscal will start receiving reports on. Fiscal will receive a report in January from the Department of Administrative Services on their estimated lapse back in December. And if you look at it, it's only about $30 million because it's very early in the fiscal year. There's not an $80 million shortfall. But it is something that fiscal is going to be paying attention to and finance is going to be paying attention to. But our Chairman Weiler had put a provision into House Bill 2 a couple of years ago to ensure that Department of Administrative Services start updating the legislature on these lapse estimates. The best held secret up before, but to provide that information to the legislature. And then we'll have similar surplus statements in Division 2 for your Highway Fund, Education Trust Fund, and your Fish and Game Fund. Just wanted to point out the CAFRA when we talk about beginning balances and what are we going to start the current fiscal year we're in is fiscal year 25. You may have heard the annual comprehensive financial report. That's a statewide annual report that will provide the audited beginning balances for the current fiscal year, so for 25. So what money was left over in the end of 24. That has been delayed. The release of that has been delayed. It's typically released in December. That the extension was granted by fiscal committee to push that release date out to January 31st due to a significant change in the financial systems at liquor. There will be a further request to extend that through the end of March. Which is pretty late during a budget session. It's all related to this big transition from liquor over into this new accounting system. Our auditors in liquor have to identify every dollar to make sure both systems are up to date. And there's a lot of testing that's required. Yes, Representative.
So that's going to make it a little more difficult for us because we won't even know what lapsed and what was the beginning amount of money we had to start with, like this shows here, until after we've finished with the budget.
Yes, and the governor even probably doesn't like it even more. The governor's going to be presenting a budget and making the best. Most of the other components of the annual financial report won't move. You might see a $10 million move one way or the other. Liquor hopefully doesn't move any further than it had from the beginning. So although not officially the audit version, there should be a good there will be a good number that the governor will begin with and the House will have. And as that's updated, it will swing a few $1,000,000 just through the normal audit activity, but I think you'll have a good base, not a final base, but a good base where 25 will be. And then I'll provide these snapshots throughout the year. I presented one to House Ways and Means early in the week, where we think 25 will end based on spending, based on revenue, et cetera. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Kane. Just to make sure I understand correctly, we have still work to do on the liquor numbers. While not an ACFR, will we have the confidence that the numbers for every other division will be as accurate as they would have been in a final ACFR? So is the only uncertainty in the liquor side, or are we going to have uncertainties in other places?
We will have certainty. I work with Dana Call, who's the comptroller, to get updates on numbers, who provides estimates of if there's swings one way or the other. So it won't be audited, but it'll be pretty certain. And you'll have some movement with liquor. I wouldn't see significant movement. So anything the governor puts out in her surplus statement and anything that we provide in the House will be pretty certain, just not audited until it's finalized. Sure. Okay. Through no fault, just to point out, I know fiscal will be talking about it. Why is there a delay? There hasn't been a delay in a while. We do have to look back 15 years or so before there was delay in audit, but this is a significant change to liquor's financial system, one they've been working on for over a decade, that was implemented at the end of April of the other fiscal year. You have to make sure both systems line up and every dollar is accounted for. Liquor, there was a delay getting that information because they want to make sure that our auditors have the right information. Our auditors need time to understand that system to give you, when the final audit is issued, those are the numbers. So although it is a delay, it is a necessary delay, in my opinion, just to make sure we're giving the state and the public the proper numbers. So there are a couple, just two charts we included in this, and I won't take too much longer, but I'll answer some questions. But the operating budget for 24-25, total funds about $15 billion. You can see the top green line up there is federal funds. Almost $4.7 million is federal. So that's on page, it's in the staple 49. But it's up top because we have it paginated based on the web thing, so I do apologize. So page 49, right after the example of the Fish and Game surplus statement, you'll see this a line chart. Federal funds have about 4.7, 4.8. General fund, the next largest source, at about 3.7. Other funds of about 2.9, almost $3 billion of other funds. Those are transfers relative to DOIT, that is agency income restricted for agency use. So that's a significant portion of the budget that you'll all be looking at. And education fund at about 2.5. Highway fund about 563 million. Turnpike 292. Liquor 178. If you look at liquor in the total, you'd see it's a smaller number as far as your budget figures are concerned. Fish and Game about 33, and sweepstakes a little under 32. So we know that's where, as far as the source of funds, where that comes from.
I do have a question. Since I'm not in Division 2, could you just remind me what the key source is for funds going into the education fund, and what the current standards are for keeping those monies segregated from the general fund? Over the largest. Not a long explanation, just kind of a highlight.
Statewide property tax is the largest. That's about 300 over 2 years, because it's a 2-year chart. It's about $720 million of statewide property tax. And then you have business enterprise taxes, another few $100 million. So those are the two main components. All lottery revenue, any lottery profit needs to, by statute and constitution, be used for education. That goes into the education trust fund. So we can provide it. We'll provide a breakdown of divisions of those components. How that money is spent in the education trust fund is driven by statute, what is allowable. And that determination is also made during the budget process. There have been items that have been moved to the education trust fund over the last couple of years that the statute was changed to allow that. So that will be up to all of you in the legislature to make that determination. In the event that something you want to spend education trust fund on another use, Mickey in Division 2 will make sure that statute is consistent with the actions that you're taking. And if we go just to the pie chart, the categories on page 50, this is one of the pie charts. Representative Weiler will do the couple other pie charts you like we've been doing for the last 20 years, but on kind of where the sources of funds are, where the categories are, revenues. But this one is by category. So if you look at the $15 billion of the budget for 24-25, you can see a large piece of pie down the bottom. And Representative Edwards, that's Division 3, but that's Health and Human Services. So Health and Human Services makes up over 50% of the budget, pushing close to 60%, depending on what the governor presents. So that's one of the larger. Followed by Education, Education Trust Fund and general funds. That's $3.4 billion. And then you have other Category 1 of general government, which Jack Mullen will be working with. Division 1 is about $1 billion. Category 2 and 3, not including Safety and Fish and Game, which Melissa will be working with, is about another 1.7 and 8. So almost $2.5 billion. And then Category 4 of transportation, including federal funds, including Turnpike, is about 1.5. So HHS and education are your two biggest sources, portions of the budget right now, and have been over the last decades. Page 51 is Fiscal Committee statute. The Fiscal Committee is responsible, as I mentioned, to allow agencies after the budget has passed to transfer funds in between class lines, to accept additional funds that maybe the budget writers were not aware of, a competitive grant or other additional funds over estimates, needs to receive legislative approval again from the authority designated to Fiscal Committee to approve that. And then the last several pages, you can see all the money over the last few years that have come in. We keep track of that come in through fiscal. In a typical biennium pre-pandemic, we were probably about $150 to $200 million of federal and other funds came in through fiscal. With ARPA, with CARES Act, there were close to $1 billion in funds that came in outside of the budget process. Most recently, you're close to about $500 million a year in ARPA funds that were coming in outside of the budget process. The reason those came in outside of the budget process, your ARPA and CARES funds, is because it's not an ongoing program. It's not operating expenses. These are one-time expenses that the legislature and governor decided it's best to keep them separate. Just for when you're doing budget comparisons, you're not watching it go up by $3 billion and then back down and wondering what happened. This is a point in time, one-time use of these funds, and that's what you'll see through those fiscal committee actions. Just to wrap up, I've included a couple of pages, examples of what you'll see in the CAFR. There'll be a surplus statement that will come out, an official audited surplus statement. What we'll provide to the committee is not an audited surplus statement. It's a surplus statement for a budget plan. The CAFR will also, when that's finalized, provide you a great 10-year history of fund balances for the general education, fish and game, and all the other funds. It'll provide you with a history of employees. Representative Weiler mentioned paychecks over the last 12 months that are issued. The CAFR will also provide you with a 10-year look back on number of employees by agencies, that each division kind of see the trend or what's growing. And then I just put a couple of examples of what are we going to provide the divisions we provide. We'll help draft amendments that are necessary to House Bill 1 or 2. We'll keep track of the financial changes that each division is making. Work with your analysts in your division and come up with a format that you think will be most helpful for your division. And we can prepare anything you need. And then finally, we'll do a detailed change report to kind of provide a similar to the compare report with a little more description of what's going to happen or what was behind some of the decisions. Just so the public may see a reduction of $100,000, but it doesn't tell you anything. We like to do a detailed change document, which is an example. I think there's on page 91 near the end of kind of what we like to provide out to the public. And that's kind of the process, it's going to be a tough budget. And I think everything you've heard over the last week, everything you've heard, it's going to be a tough budget, but there are no easy ones. Even the ones with significant, there were no easy budgets. I think ask Representative Weiler and ask Representative Wallner if they've ever seen an easy budget. The answer will probably be no for many different reasons. But you do have great staff, financial staff out in the agencies that will assist you and provide you any information you need. Our staff is there to help coordinate that and get that for you and put it in a format that will be most helpful to you. So we're here for you, and we're looking forward to working with you over the next several weeks.
Thank you. And the work we've had from the LBA is the only thing that enabled us to do our job. These are people that are very good at this. We'll sit there all day doing stuff, and then we'll go home at 4 or 5 o'clock at night. And the next morning, we're ready to start again. They've been up all night making sure everything that we did during that negotiation got put in a format that we can look at the next day and say, okay. Otherwise, one of us would be up all night doing that stuff. So got to hand it to them. They don't take vacations during the budget time. They maybe have a little time off later on in the year. One of the other things that came to mind when I did the paycheck count, there are things that come before fiscal that will be a temporary thing. And so one of the questions we might ask, where we see a change in paychecks that lasts for a period, was there a grant that gave you this? Because those people would still be in that department, and they would still be getting paychecks that wouldn't deduct the ones that were on temporary or there as a result. So if we do see some numbers like that, follow-on question is, are there any grants that have expired? Because when we do approve those grants at fiscal, and 5 of us here are on fiscal and a couple others that are alternates. So when we do see a grant come in, and it'll say, we'll hire these people, and it'll say in the fine print that when the grant expires, the jobs go away. So we have to ensure that in fact happens and see. So one of the things as we look at paychecks is how many grants have expired during this 12 months and see if in fact the jobs went away. So just something that came to me as we were having this discussion that I hadn't mentioned earlier. So any further questions from the LBA? Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to share a little bit more of my experience with working with the LBA, specifically with Mr. Ripple the last 2 terms, and this may be. I'm saying this because I think it's beneficial as an orientation issue. I have found Mr. Ripple extremely capable of talking to the Democrats and to the Republicans about what kind of analysis we want to have done and what sort of information we need so that we can have a debate in committee. And he's exceptionally trustworthy, and I'm sure that's true of all the LBAs, to maintain discretion so that the members are the ones controlling the information and controlling the debate. And so I think that discretion is extremely honorable and useful for the effective functioning of the committees. I appreciate that. Also, when we take up bills and we have some amendments that we would like to debate and consider, Mr. Ripple is exceptionally good at working with OLS to get the amendments turned around, and that's a vital function for us to get those things done quickly and correctly. So I just want to point that out as an LBA service that I don't think you headlined today, but it's vital. And I also think that the fact that our LBA works with the House side of finance and the Senate side of finance, and while that discretion that I talked about is maintained, I think the situational awareness of what the Senate is thinking and talking about is extremely useful to us too. So there are many more layers to how great I think the LBA is, and we simply from my perspective, we could not do this job without the LBA. It's vital. They're vital team members, and I just appreciate the 4 years of having worked with them. So, thank you. I hope that was useful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there are some cases in the budget of double counting, particularly the best example is probably DOIT, right? Because one agency puts in their budget, we're spending so much on information technology, then DOIT gets that money as income and then spends it on salaries and so on. So how do we sort of find these kind of numbers? And when we see things like your big pie chart, do that include double counting, or is it already taken out somehow?
Thank you, Representative. So the pie charts are gross, so it's everything, double counting and everything. But as far as how much double counting there is between transfers, because both the sending agency and the spending agency need to have that authority to actually make those expenditures. On page 26 of this document, this was just added probably about 3 budgets ago. If you look at the totals, you can see that the total funds, they have the various sources. The total funds about $7.4 billion in 24, 7.6 billion in 25. Less funds for budget revenue transfers, other funds, about $289 million. That's the double counting in 24, and about 290 in 25. And so in total, the budget is closer to a 14. If you take out the double counting, is close to a 14.5. Every accounting unit that has a transfer to another agency or receives a transfer from another agency, you will see that line, less funds from budgeted revenue transfers. So as you go through the budget, you'll see the total, the gross total, plus the net total after you get rid of the transfers. So you'll be able to monitor that for every accounting unit.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, here we are drinking from a fire hose. Any further questions? Representative Moni.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kane, for all you do. I'm glad to see on page 90 you have an example of an appropriation bill. And there's curious language that repeatedly comes up that I thought maybe you could just give some insight to and let us know how often it happens. And that appears on lines 7 and 8 on page 90. The governor authorized to draw a warrant. Very little discussion ever occurs with regards to that line, but we see it over and over. Could you expand on that and let us know how often that occurs? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Representative Mooney. Any general fund appropriation through a section requires that language. It has to, the governor needs the authorization from the legislature to draw a warrant. It's obviously up to the governor. The legislature can't force the governor to do anything, so the language is may draw a warrant. What a warrant is an authorization from the governor that he provides in a letter to the Department of Administrative Services that sets up that accounting unit. You'll only see that, if you do see that language in that sentence, that's a general fund that's going to be hit on the general fund. Department, if it was a highway fund appropriation, it says shall be a charge against the highway fund, fishing game, etc. So that warrant language is required. And as we're looking at any bill that's being introduced, the 1,100 bills, we're looking for drawer warrant because that means that's a general fund, and that's the necessary language for the governor to actually provide that letter to Department of Administrative Services to draw that money from the general fund. And they do have that warrant authority in the beginning of House Bill 1 for the major House Bill 1, but any appropriation in House Bill 2 from the general fund needs that language, and that's something we'll check to make sure it's there. Okay.
Further questions from the committee? Okay, so we're back at 1 o'clock. You'll go to your divisions. Division chairs, you might want to work on the seating charts in the interim and have your seating charts ready for your divisions. Your division LBA people will be there to brief you on what's going to be done in each division. That will be in the afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock. Enjoy, Representative. Edwards?
Thank you, Representative Weiler. We're calling a little bit of an audible here on what we're doing with Division 3. Because it conflicts with HHS EA doing their DHHS orientation, I've been asking and have permission from the chair there to have our Division 3 go participate in that DHHS orientation. So
What time
because
does that start?
it's at 1, and I think my folks know that.
Okay.
And so what I'll just be doing is I'll, by myself, come and start Division 3's orientation and recess it or close it, whatever the right thing to
Very
do
good.
is, just to keep us clear on
Maybe
the
you'll have
calendar.
time later on after the other one.
Yeah, and I think this was such a great orientation and so much information that we're probably full for the day anyways.
Does every member know what division they're on? Very good. All right, let's break for lunch, and Division 3 has a different plan. Division 1 and 2 have their own rooms. Division 1 over here, Division 2 across the hall in that smaller room. And welcome to Finance Committee. Thank you all for your attendance. I'm impressed with your backgrounds, and I know that we'll get some good work done here. I thank you all for your attendance. Have a good lunch. Thank you.
Are you going to come over with us this afternoon? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Move your finger.
So, yeah, so have you got a seating plan done?